Information about the world of running, inspiration to fuel passion and excellence, and ideas for making connections and finding community. You're listening to AtoZrunning. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the AtoZrunning podcast, where we help runners thrive. I'm Andi.
And I'm Zach, and this episode is fueled by chewy fudge brownies, because what else do we eat?
But brownies and chocolate all the time.
Except for breakfast.
No, we don't.
That's bagels and peanut butter.
We do have a nutritionist coming up in a few episodes, so
good.
It's really great information. She's okay with eating treats occasionally, but probably not as fuel.
We'll talk about that more later because there's a lot to talk about with that. But keep in mind, the first thing you need to do right now is go to AtoZrunning.com, look for the word follow, and then head over to YouTube so you can see that chewy fudge brownie. It's moist and delectable. And you want to see it on YouTube, and then subscribe because it's so good you want to see it again the next time. All right. Now, we do want you to get involved in the conversation, share some questions, comments, even we love the ongoing conversations. You know, there's questions that come up that we get to answer and then re-answer or engage with the same people. It's good stuff.
Yeah, so Benjamin Murray had sent me a message. There was a picture of me doing one of my drills before running on Instagram, and he said, "Are you still doing those zombie drills in airplanes?" To which I said, yes.
If she's doing them early in the morning, because everything she does early in the morning is like a zombie
drill. Hey, I hear that.
Good.
If I did zombie drills every day, I would probably be a better runner. So I thank you, Benjamin Murray, for reminding me. I have been doing them occasionally. I'll link to the episode. I think it's Mike Swinger, and it's How to Run Like a Zombie or Why Run Like a Zombie.
Something like that, but it's zombie in the title, so it'll stand out.
So the reason that you do these drills is it really helps stabilize your core, and it helps you put your hips in the correct position, and it kind of just engages the whole posterior chain better. And you can do it while you're running, and that's the reason why I think it's really great, because sometimes you realize you're not activating the way you should, and you can do airplane drills and zombie drills while you're running.
And then everyone who watches you will look at you strangely and judge you for it.
And who cares, right? Who cares? It's 2020. Everyone's a little strange these days.
Also, another shout out. This one's from Kate. Caitlin, thank you so much for letting us know that our contact page was not quite working properly. And you would have never guessed it, but we found out because Caitlin said, "I've been trying to get a hold of you and you haven't gotten back to me."
Yeah.
So I must just publicly express my gratitude for such a gracious response, because she continued to try to get a hold of us for quite some time until finally she got through. And that is amazing.
Perseverance.
Because you do not owe us that kind of persistence.
And we're so excited because now we're going to be her coaches. So we love that kind of perseverance.
To continue working with so many of you. And for those of you who have tried to get a hold of us in the past and maybe didn't and gave up, try again, because we fixed it.
Yeah. And also, if you are looking for a coach, we do have openings available, so you can contact us through that page, or you could just go to AtoZrunning@gmail.com, send us a message, hit us up. We want to be your coach.
If instead you're just looking for free stuff, we've got some of that too.
We do. So we're going to do another contest because we realize that Apple really does prioritize the podcasts that have the most amount of reviews.
So we're going to try to use you and manipulate you to get us to get better success
by giving you free stuff. So hopefully that's a win-win for you. And we appreciate all your engagement so far. You guys are the best running community ever. So this is one of the items. This is like a buff. It's a neck gaiter. I think that's the generic version.
We haven't figured out what these are actually called.
Yes.
We call them buffs. We call them hoo-rags. But then we realized both of those are brands.
They're brands, yes. And then we have some DeFeet socks.
They're holiday
Christmas
festive
socks, yes.
cycling holiday socks.
Yeah. It's actually called Eggnog Christmas sock.
That makes no sense because there's no eggnog on it.
And then we also we've been talking about these products a lot. Some Knockaround sunglasses.
Gorgeous.
Yeah, they're an all black, so pretty snazzy.
They're the black on black version.
Yes.
You could get away with being on a set of Men in Black as well as being suave in your running clothes.
Mm-hmm. So those are the 3 prizes for the winner. There's only one winner this time.
But you get everything, so that's worth it.
Yeah, so this is how you do it. All the details will be on AtoZrunning.com/contest.
AtoZrunning.com/contest.
Yes. So you rate us and review us on Apple. I'm hoping some good things, but you be honest, And then
No, don't rate us if you're not going to rate us well. That's clearly.
And then you submit to enter on AtoZrunning.com/contest. So you let us know, because the reason why we do that is because we can't see who would win via your name on Apple Podcasts. So we'd like to make a connection with you so we know that you said those nice words and thank you in person.
Well, this week on the podcast, we have the topic of trails. Mm-hmm. So many, if not most of you, are probably road runners, because that occupies the majority of runners in the world, but certainly in America. But we have found that also, while you are road runners by a general definition, even then, most of us still like to try to scratch the itch of trails when we can and when we have access to. And we've been kind of wondering about that a bit lately. Like, what is it that makes trails effective? Why do we do those kinds of things? So the question we are answering this week then is, what are the benefits of running trails? And in order to answer that question well, we figured we'd bring on a trail ultra running expert.
Yes.
Also with a show to talk about trails and ultra running. So he's talked with a lot of other experts as well, and that's Rob Steger.
Yes.
So Rob will be joining us later to answer the question.
Mm-hmm. He is the host of Training for Ultra, and he is the author of a book, which is Training for Ultra, and he has a show on Amazon. So he's a big deal. We're really grateful to have him on air. But first, we're going to talk about the world of running. This week on the world of running, it's only fitting that we have an ultra race.
Lots of them, in fact.
Two of them, yeah. And the first one that we're going to talk about happened. It's the JFK 50-mile race. So this one has happened already, so we're here to tell you the results. The first 15 and a half miles are on the Appalachian Trails in this event.
Gorgeous.
Mm-hmm. And the men's winner was Hayden Hawks. And in his debut of this event, he won, but also got the course record.
Okay.
Which is quite phenomenal. And it's
nice to do that.
This is a 50-mile race, okay? And he ran at 6:21 pace. Yeah, I know. And this is not just flat roads.
Oh.
In a 50-mile race, can you imagine
My
running
legs
that
just
fast?
went numb. I'll let you know when it comes back.
So that time was 5 hours, 18 minutes, and 40 seconds.
And whose record did he break? Jim Walmsley.
Yeah, legendary.
Right?
Legendary.
The
female winner was Camille Herron, and she won. She was the favorite to win because she's the champion of the world. She won in a time of 6 hours, 31 minutes, and 14 seconds, and she won by nearly half an hour.
Okay.
In this event. And she did not hit the time that she was hoping to. She's hoping to get the course record, but that did elude her. She does hope to come back, and she knows that she's capable. So it just needs to be the right time. And she's just expressing her gratitude just to get to do this race during a pandemic. And her personal best time in the 50-mile race is 5 hours, 38 minutes, and 41 seconds.
Wow.
Yes.
That is under 7-minute pace.
Yeah. And that's an all-time world best.
Okay.
And this isn't actually her event. She specializes in longer events. So
is that a thing? People specialize in.
Yeah, they can go for
an ultra running. It's just basically anything goes.
And so she owns the world best performances for the 100-mile event and the 24-hour event.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's quite a repertoire.
It is.
So basically, while you're doing whatever it is you're doing, at any time that you're doing it, she's probably running.
She's probably running.
That's the
or
assumption
eating
here.
or eating while running.
Yeah, I would guess
sleeping.
She has to multitask in order to fit it all in.
Yeah. So the next thing I want to talk about is something that might be going on as you're listening to this is the Up Dog 10-miler. We've talked about it a couple times, but it was moved from Monday to Tuesday. So we air this kind of like Monday night, Tuesday morning. So you might want to hop on over and get the live stream going. I will link to that in the show notes, AtoZrunning.com/episode 60. Make sure you go there. I'll have the link. And that again is Kira D'Amato's event where she's going for that American 10-mile women only record. And Molly Seidel will be there. And I should mention that Diane Nukiri wasn't able to participate. So COVID happens, life happens.
Stuff.
Yes.
Another ultramarathon coming up
Yes.
Because people do these things. I'm still not sure why.
Phantasm 24-hour challenge. So it's a 24-hour track event.
That's the way you have to do it when you're running for time, or when you're running for a set time and the distance is the goal. You have to do it on a track. So you have an accurate measurement of the distance.
But it's so brutal to be like without any kind of up and down. Man. Yep. So I have to mention what is necessary to get this record before I
do you have to say this?
This makes Zach cringe because
I ran 10K on a track a few days ago in a time trial. 10K, that is 6 miles plus a quarter. And that was awful. And I felt the need to switch direction.
So this event, they'll switch every 4 hours, Zachary. So like over a marathon distance. Every 4 hours, they'll be switching directions. And I say they, and that's actually one person is going for it. Kilian Jornet. And he will have pacers and people running with him, but he is the only one really attempting this record. And the previous record is 188.59 miles.
Which probably only means something when we say that's running how fast for
7:38 pace for 24 hours.
Straight.
That's crazy, you guys. 7:38 mile pace for 24 hours. That means you're like having to eat while running 7:38 pace. Any bathroom breaks, you'll have to be running like sub 7 minute pace. So this is a very difficult record, and it will be an amazing feat if Kilian is able to do this.
So I feel the need to insert here very briefly that my college coach, so Q, if you're listening, here's a Q shout out for any of you who know him. Previous to, and he was on our podcast back a little while back talking about track history, great stuff. Okay, so he used to do this challenge with a few of his teammates when he was in college, where they would basically, after the first of the year, January 1st, the first person to get to 100 miles wins the contest, the challenge, right? So they would try to run as much as they could, as quickly as they could to get to 100 miles. And it was things like, run 24 miles a day for a few days. And at one point, he's like, I'm going to do this in under 3 days, was his goal, which is, over a marathon a day. And these guys were 800-meter runners, not long-distance runners, trying to get to... And he explains there's a certain point in time where he no longer is fully conscious. Someone pokes him and says, hey, you got to get up and go do some miles. And he would just kind of roll out of his bed, trudge around for a couple hours, go back to his bed. Someone would give him some food. And he's like, you get this fog. And here I am thinking 188 miles in 24 hours. Wow. Something's missing from reality there.
Well, he's bringing us a lot of entertainment, and I'll be excited to watch the live stream of that, which I will also be linking in the show notes, AtoZrunning.com. You can find him there.
Next up, let's talk about trails. As indicated, our main topic question this week is, what are the benefits of running trails? And certainly, a great many of us feel that kind of like love of the occasional trail run kind of thing, especially when the weather's quite right and you want to run in the shade. Well, there's a lot of good things going on there. Before we do anything else, I do have to tell a quick story because it's important. It is important, Andy. So I've run one trail race ever.
Besides cross country.
And it was but those don't count. They're not trail races. Very different when you're running on grass in the middle of a field than running, bushwhacking through who knows what, getting lost, trying to follow little dots on trees. Because we got lost in this one trail race that I ever ran. And I can't say it was my fault this time, but all the other times races have gotten lost have been my fault. And also, very important to note that in trail running, you generally don't find many opportunities to run as fast as you can because the terrain does not allow for that. And most of these are really long. I was running a 10-mile long trail race, which probably trail runners out there are like rolling their eyes thinking that doesn't count. It doesn't. I agree with you. It doesn't. But anyway, so I did feel like it was important to try to find opportunity to run as fast as possible, since you spend most of the time not running as fast as possible because you're dodging things and people and stuff and animals. So I got to this point where I was on a dirt road. The trail kicked out into a dirt road, and you run downhill slightly, so it's perfect setup, for maybe half a mile or so. It was quite substantial, and I just thought, this is perfect. And I let loose. It was near the end of the race. I was feeling good. let loose. And then at the end of the hill at the bottom, it cuts back into the trail, just kind of a slight dip into the trail, and then the trail goes off into the woods again. And so I figured I'd dip into the trail and then ease up a bit there. What I didn't figure on was the fact that the trail dipped and the rest of the foliage and tree canopy did not. So I entered the trail blind to run smack into a tree, nearly full tilt, knocked me squarely off my feet, and I didn't realize what had happened until I was sitting on the ground thinking to myself, wasn't I running just a moment ago? And the answer was yes, I was, far too quickly. So that's the first lesson that we should probably give in trail running, which is there are benefits, but there are costs as well. And we need to understand how to maximize the benefits for a positive experience.
And that's why we learn from others. That's why
Yes.
we're bringing Rob Steger on, because he has the podcast Training for Ultra and the book Training for Ultra and a show on Amazon. I'll link to all of that. But he is also, he has extremely great personal experience. He ran the Triple Crown, which is Bigfoot 200,
Ooh.
Tahoe 200,
Ooh.
and Moab 240.
Why not? Why not? Because
That's all in 60
gotta
days,
be.
guys. All in 60 days. So he has a lot of trail running experience, you could say. He's spent a lot of time on trails. So we're going to talk with him today because he has a lot of great insight, because he's interviewed many trail runners as well as being a very accomplished one himself.
Some of the most productive things he's going to share are the things you need to be thinking about doing stuff like that most of us who don't do those things never would think about.
Mm-hmm.
Really practical stuff. And just general conversation about why trail running can be an amazing experience.
Mm-hmm. Without further ado, let's talk to Rob. Hi, Rob. Welcome to the A to Z Running Podcast.
Thanks for having me.
Well, this is really exciting because we are like not super trail people, and you are the guru, the expert on trail running. You have your own podcast talking about ultras, and a lot of ultras are on trails. So today we kind of want to talk about trail running and what you need for it, some experiences that you've had, and how people can transition from the road to the trail. So we'd like to start with maybe some of your experiences on the trail.
I mean, I'd start off with saying the transition, I was not a pro by any means. I wasn't even middle of the pack when it came to any kind of road running. But I did find myself injured frequently, trying to find an outlet where running was a stress reliever, but I was also getting stress fractures probably. So I was trying to find a way to take this newfound kind of balance to my life and be able to do it a little bit more. And the softness of the trails kind of allowed me to develop as a runner. So I'd done maybe 500 miles, if that, just on like bike trails and whatnot, and just went all in on trails. And it was like my very first experience was taking, I think I had some New Balance running shoes at the time, road shoes, onto the trails, and I found myself at one point in like a foot deep of mud, and these shoes were just totally trashed afterwards because I'd forgot my trail shoes. But my very first experience, it was like I never looked down at my watch really. So we all, it's kind of a habit of training for marathons and halves and even faster, like 5Ks, like constantly looking at your splits. And when you're out on the trail and you find yourself either crossing a creek in some horrible mud, stopping to see crazy wildlife that, just happens to be out there, or like doing a stupid steep climb, like, splits are irrelevant. It's all about time on your feet, and it's just this whole new world out there that really is refreshing, as opposed to just constantly like, oh, missed that split by 3 seconds. Like now I'm mentally down for the next mile or two. Like when you're out there, everything's kind of in perspective, and you realize that maybe it's silly to worry about that 3 seconds. So, but I'm a middle of the pack guy that found that the longer I was on my feet, the longer the races, kind of the better I was, as weird as that sounds. And I kind of developed backwards as a runner. I started off just a few years ago, late 2015, and then my first marathon was 2016. In the following month, I ran a 50K. Following month, I ran a 50 miler. Then I think a few months later, I went for my first 100 miler. So that was my long runs were races. I just went, I'm not really scared of failure at this point. This is working really well. So that's how I found myself out on the trails. A few years later, the races got longer and longer, but that's how it started. Was just I needed a soft trail so I wasn't getting hurt.
There's something to that. We hear people talk about that a lot, especially along that vein of, I've struggled with injury as a runner, but I love running and I don't want to give it up. Is there another option? And the idea of trails for so many reasons being an option where people aren't struggling with injury as much and where people are able to make that changeover and see greater longevity and some of those kinds of things. You mentioned, the trail's softer. That certainly makes a difference. But there's got to be more to it than that, too. Why is it, do you feel like we see so many of these ultra marathoners with long careers of just not necessarily being the best in the world for 20, 30 years, but they're doing it for long periods of time? And I ran into a guy on a trail once, and he was like 62-ish. I can't remember exactly what he said. And I asked him where he was or what he was running or something, and he's like, "Oh, I've got just a couple more." I can't remember what he said, rounds or something. And I was like, "Oh, not bad. I'm just finishing up one loop myself." And he's like, "Yeah." He's like, "Well, maybe I'll see you in a couple hours." And I'm like, "What?" No, I'm gonna be done in about 20 minutes. But so I see things like that, and I think there's something about this that keeps people in it longer and is better on bodies. There's those things there. Am I missing anything else?
Yeah, a lot of it's low intensity aerobic type training where 80 to 90% of your training is easy runs. Like if you're really doing it right, and it's hard because that's sometimes really boring to a lot of people, but the best ultra marathoners, in my opinion, can do 80% of their runs just easy, and they throw in that harder effort once in a while. But that is not boosting lactic acid in your body and kind of destroying your joints, if you're doing every run as a hard run. But with ultra marathons, honestly, 90% of your running should just be pretty chill, enjoyable miles. Unless you're a super elite, maybe you can mix in additional harder efforts and strength training and all that other good stuff. But for us normal folks that have kids and jobs full time, like most of your runs should be easy. So when you start getting into 50 milers, 100Ks, 100 milers, and then I've been toying with 200 milers recently since late 2018, and I've done Moab 240, and then I did the Triple Crown last year, which was Bigfoot 200 with 42,000 feet of gain, Tahoe 200 with 38,000 feet of gain, and then Moab 240 with I think 20 or 30,000 feet of gain. So these are like giant efforts, not only with the miles, but then the climbing and the descents and just the extreme nature of them. And if I go out, you want running economy, but and it does help, being in really good shape. But when you're at mile 220 during Moab 240, it's like, if you can, shave 10 seconds off your mile in training, doesn't matter at all. There's just so many miles. And I had fun last year making a 401k for pediatric cancer research. So that was actually a 250 mile effort. And you get to the point where you start breaking through and you start realizing the potential. Like there are really no limits other than time and resources. So if you have a lot of time and a lot of resources, you can actually run a very, very long distance. And it's just a totally different mentality on the trails. The trails were just this introduction to a whole different world. And if you want more of that world, you can run a little bit longer races.
I think it's so profound too. I think that a lot of distance runners could benefit even from the concept of this easier running. We have been talking about it a lot recently, actually. The fact that a lot of us hurry. We hurry on our easy runs, and that way sometimes we're getting injured because we're not getting full recovery for our next effort. So I think that concept of like not hurrying, taking it as an experience. It's not like this measurement of the day as far as like performance. It's an experience that you have every day instead of it being a means to an end. That's kind of what I hear from trail runners, is that it's an experience. There's more to it than just running. Can you tell us some things about trail running beyond the running itself that you love? Like, is it nature? Is it the meditation? What drives you to do these long distance races?
I mean, I like the challenge. I like working every day. Like I'm big on finding that goal that makes you jump out of bed and get excited to run. And yeah, with easy runs, I mean, Strava can be destructive if you're trying. I mean, you post something, even a middle of the pack guy like me, it's can be somewhat embarrassing at times, but you have to get over that. And yeah, the sunsets, the sunrises, sometimes you see a sunrise and sunset during a race 3 or 4 times. So it's pretty, like, I always joke, like, the second sunrise is, like, the best. Because then normally it gets a little uglier in those longer efforts. But there's just, yeah, running at night can be almost like a religious experience when you're out there. And a lot of these 200 milers get out way in the middle of nowhere, so you don't see another human. And these are 20-mile segments, so I don't see an aid station for almost a marathon distance in a lot of cases. I'm just self-supported throughout that effort. And you're just out there alone, and if you're not totally sleep deprived and hallucinating, it can be profound. So I would say most ultra runners have an extreme personality, so it kind of fits. I mean, there's a lot worse things all these extreme personalities could be doing than running, but it's been life-changing for me, and I have found meditation, and it's refreshing having that outlet, so that I know regardless if I ever get injured or like permanently can't run, I have this stress outlet that I've developed through running to always have, if needed. So again, there can be like a spiritual side to it when you're out there and it's just a full moon and it's just you and the trail and the sounds of running water or trees in the wind. And yeah, it's really cool. You forget that it's any kind of form of exercise, because it truly, it's an adventure. You're exploring on 2 feet, and yeah, it's truly amazing.
So there's something there to the tension of, you're by yourself, you're in the wilderness. There's literal wild animals and hazards of the trail, and then you add in something like the night factor when you can't see. You hear the sound of something, and you're wondering the whole time, what is that? And is it going to come out and try to eat me, or is it just an owl? What? So those kinds of things. I am curious, and maybe this is a taboo question to ask a trail runner, but what are some of those? What are some of those startling, frightening? Have you ever been tragically lost on a trail before, training run or a race or otherwise? Any of those kinds of things that we all fear when we think about trail running?
In just for background, there are no taboo questions for trail runners. So, but a lot of that stays on the trail. So, no, joking aside, I'd say I have one story where it was a training run. I haven't really shared this with many people, I don't think, but I was new to Colorado, so I was like really excited to try out everything around here. There was some snow on the ground. I went out, and because it was icy and snowy, like the locals are like, we're just gonna wait 2 days to go run there. But I was like, I gotta get out. It's Saturday. Um, and the trail was in this national park, and it was on a trail called I think it was called Mountain Lion Trail. And so I was running, got to the very top. It was a big climb. I was cold because it gets colder when you go up higher and it's more exposed. And running, I got lost, and then I figured I'd course correct because the top was very pointed. I'd just go all the way around, and it was wooded enough. And so I was going through snow that was probably 1.5 feet deep, and I was just like, I'll just circle around and I'll find the trail that I came up on. And I tripped, and so I'm like, I like face plant in snow, and I look up, and there's a cave like maybe 5 feet to my left, and and it looked like probably where mountain lions live. And we're just like, I'm totally removed away from people, like looking directly into a mountain lion cave potentially. I got freaked out and just like sprinted as hard as I could to, correct, and then got down. And then later I was Google searching that trail, and I was like, oh, that's why they named it Mountain Lion Trail, because there's like YouTube videos of like 4 mountain lions stalking deer that's like right in that area. And I was just like, I'm such an idiot. I can't go solo in those type of more extreme and remote areas. So I got lucky there, and I'm trying to think of anything else. A lot of time it just takes training to get used to running in the dark, to the point where you're just overly comfortable falling asleep wherever, like during big races. But yeah, I've had races where I'm like whipping my headlamp around, like paranoid, clanking my poles, like, and I could have been stalked. I mean, I think mountain lions will see you like once for every few hours you're out on the trails, at least out west. So, but it's super rare to even see them. And yeah, I think initially when I was just starting trail running, I was totally freaked out, and I'd recommend just go out with someone else and get accustomed to it. And it's just like anything else in running, you just have to train for it, and over time you'll get your your body will adapt to it, essentially, your mind.
Mm-hmm.
That's good advice. Yes, I like the bring a Sherpa, bring somebody who knows their way, and you can safety and numbers.
Someone slightly slower than you is what I'd recommend.
That's wise.
It's hard for that's hard for me. I'm always the last guy. So.
I do wonder. So we talked a little bit about how you transitioned to trails, or started with trails, in order to keep healthy. I mean, you go really far. It kind of blows my mind, because I'm personally rather injury prone. So when I hear you say that you're doing all of these miles, like, you did the Triple Crown, everything, is there anything else that you do to stay healthy, or anything that you do on the trail that you think contributes to maintaining your health besides the soft surfaces?
I mean, I would say I'm like highly focused on diet. I mean, prior to COVID's kind of wrecked that a little bit for me, but I'm getting refocused. But nutrition, and like I'm like very into, and that's why I'm a big fan of Hammer Nutrition. But vitamins, knowing like where you're getting your vitamins, not missing out on anything your body vitally needs, because once you start putting in a little bit higher mileage, and my miles aren't that big. I use like 100-mile races as long runs, and that kind of cuts back and allows me to do 40 to 60-mile weeks when I'm like actually training for something. They could be a 200-miler. But I would say, I can't think of anything else. I mean, I think nutrition's huge. I think hydration is huge because my muscle tension, it's not gonna, if I go out and I'm slightly dehydrated, I guess I'm listening to my body closely, I'd say, because from the second I get out of bed, I know kind of a probability of where I am in terms of where my training's been, but then where my hydration is. And so I know like those high risk days, I'm not afraid to say, I'll just take the day off. One day is not going to ruin a training block. Even if that training block went awry, it's not a big deal. Like all my training, all my races are kind of in perspective of, I want to be that 62-year-old guy that sees a young gun out there and says, I'll see you in a few hours. Like that's truly my goal. And my other goal is like inspiring people to get out and run and just eat a little healthier, because I've been in a bad place with nutrition, and I've been to a point where I couldn't run a single mile. And the thought of even running 1 mile made me tear up. I remember my first time running 4 miles was like mind-blowing and amazing. And I went through a decent amount of weight loss. And so I think a lot of my training is well in perspective. So I don't follow any kind of like specific training plan. And that was a big part of my early failures was, I needed those back-to-back long runs, and I knew Sunday was not going to go well, but I still was able to go out, and then I'd, pull my groin or whatever and like be out for a few weeks. So I finally learned, like, listen to your body from the second your 2 feet hit the floor, and in no kind of probability weight the risk of your day. And if it's a very, very high risk, like subconsciously, you kind of know, just don't do that workout. Like, it's just not worth it. And that's truly the biggest breakthrough I had, was realizing, like, when I was not getting injured, maybe I wasn't making the biggest gains, but I wasn't setting myself back. And so I went several years with literally no injuries, really. And just that kind of layering, it turned into, something pretty cool. But I would say, combination of just being aware of high risk injury, nutrition and hydration, and then easy runs, a lot of easy runs.
Good advice.
Definitely. So I'm curious, and certainly just kind of reflecting on your scope of involvement in trail running and with everything that you do, not just personally, but then also with the work you do in the content you share. You have a lot of exposure to the things that trail runners are most concerned about, the things trail runners are wondering, their questions on their minds, and those kinds of things. What are some of those, when we think about, if a trail runner is listening to our podcast here and they're like, okay, yeah, I know all that stuff, but here's the thing that I'm wondering. What kinds of things do trail runners ask, or concerns they have?
Good question. And I get so many questions probably every day. I'm like kind of hammered, which is fine. Like, I don't mind. I try to get back to everyone. A lot of gear questions. Like, gear becomes a little bit more important when you're doing these segments that are like 15 miles and you got 8,000 feet of gain just to get aid station to aid station. So it's a lot of little things like blister prevention, anti-chafing. Chafings can be a game ender. So if you think, like, at the end of that marathon, you weren't wearing knit covers, or you're chafing a little bit, we'll multiply that times 10 in some of these races for us. So a lot of those questions. yeah, like what kind of trekking poles were you using during running the Triple Crown? Like I get tons of those. I'm trying to think of anything else. A lot of nutrition questions because just the quantity of nutrition goes up substantially. And so I think ultra runners, there's kind of like two categories. You're either like completely into knowing every single aspect of your diet, or like you're just throwing in whatever and you're you're burning the furnace hot, which some people can get away with, a lot of people can't. Because if you're not nailing down hydration and nutrition, you're going to be on the side of the trails behind the bushes. So I know in marathoning, it happens occasionally. You know, you hit mile 20 and your tummy has rumblies. Well, when you're in the middle of nowhere, and it can be a little bit different, but a lot of that is like you just can't eat gels for 4 days straight. Even like very low sugar gels, just the glucose will cause a stomach bomb that can be game ending. So, and a lot of runners are, at least ultra runners, trail runners, are focused on a little bit like higher fat type diets, and again that falls back into like two kind of subcategories, and a lot of that's just sustained energy levels, because you can have a great 100K at Moab 240, and then mile 70 rolls around and you're basically crawling. So it takes a lot of experience, and I just get tons of gear questions and nutrition questions, and then I think anything else.
What about sleep? Do you get sleep
Oh,
questions?
it's its own. Yeah, I would say it's weird being in the category of like having finished 4 200 milers, because there's just not, it's a weird subcategory within a subcategory. And there's just not many people that have gone through and experienced how to do that. And I just kind of went all in, learned as I went, kind of nothing was a failure. It was either going to be a learning experience or, not an issue. But yes, sleep's a hard one. And I don't even know if I've really mastered it yet. Best example is Moab 240 this year. I slept more than I did the previous year by like a pretty large amount. And I ended up running 12 hours faster this year. And that's after waking up at 4 a.m., running 7.5 miles before the race started so that I could get those charity miles in. And I still was able to run half a day faster. And it's just weird timing on a lot of stuff. And yeah, it takes experience. And it takes just learning to the point where I know I can set my watch for 7 minutes and lay down on any trail anywhere. And that's the exact amount of time I need to like reset, so that my eyes can like focus and like my brain can kind of be with it. But you're doing races that are 3 to 4 days straight. Like there's no hotels or, we're not like stopping the race. It's just they start the clock and you just go. So it's been fascinating.
That is very fascinating.
Very fascinating.
Yeah. We were following that I'm going to say it wrong.
Big's
Backyard
Yeah.
Ultra. And we're like, does Courtney DeWalter like sleep in that 10 minutes in between her loops? Like, is someone able? Yeah.
That's
okay.
amazing.
We were wondering that. We're like, how does that happen?
Yeah.
Like,
She can do 2-minute naps, which is like really rare. But that's the hardest part of that race is like the sleep element. And I've been in a similar format to that, and sleep's like, it's a lot of it's the running, but we know that people can run across the United States, so you can take sleep breaks and just go. Like I have friends that can run across the United States pretty easily.
Wow.
I have a co-host of my podcast that probably could if given the amount of time and resources. But yeah, that race is hard, and it's also genius with how Laz developed it, because it's like exactly 100 miles in exactly 24 hours. And yeah, how you do the sleep. I haven't done that race, so I don't have like the exact experience or knowledge to share with you on that. But Courtney's mastered the cat nap. That's all I'll say.
Mastered the cat nap. I like that. That's great. So I guess our last question would be, if anyone is considering doing ultras or trail running, you are an enthusiast. You have all these stories and you have great resources by, interviewing ultra marathoners, and you have this show. What would you tell someone? You're an enthusiast. You have a message. What do you say to someone who's interested in trail running or ultra running, or both?
I'd say, what do you have to lose? I mean, get out there, go have fun. I think my big message that I try to share with everyone every day is like, enjoy your training. Like, I think it's very easy to get so caught up in your plan and where you are and your race results and your Strava course records being taken, or in my case, my one segment, third place, it turned into like after people saw that, it disappeared on my radar. Just go have fun. We forget, it's so basic, but go have fun and run, and like choose a goal that when you wake up, you jump out of bed. You're excited to go run. This is not a job for 99.9% of us. And I know people that it is their job, and even they still figure out a way to have fun. So like, life's too short. I found that out quickly with my dad's health scare, changed my life, and we all have the ability to make these changes for ourselves and become better. Like, change for the better is possible, and I'm living proof of that. Like, there is hope, so don't give up on yourself. Like, truly, it's life-changing, and again, nothing to lose. And it's okay to go out there without your GPS watch. And a lot of us, it might feel like we're running naked without seeing our splits, but it's okay to get out there and like look around and live a little bit and have fun, and take your friends out there and laugh. And yeah, I think that's kind of my big message, is like, it's okay to be average. Most of us are average. It's kind of the definition of average. So middle of the pack's a good spot. I've been second to last in a local half marathon, and the last place guy had just had heart surgery the previous year. So I've been at the very, very back of the pack before, and it's okay. We get the most bruised bananas at the finish line. It's still a good place. So yeah, just forget what other people are thinking and just go enjoy yourself. Life's too short. Get out there, have fun.
I love that. That's motivating. So good.
Thank you, Rob.
Well, thank you so much for coming on our show, Rob. We loved having you.
Yeah, honor to be on your show. Thank you, guys.
Well, if you're anything like me, there's a very good chance that your knees just aged 10 years and all the cartilage ran out just from listening to Rob talk. But
no,
there's still some positives to me. I'm kidding.
Well, he actually got in. The thing that fascinates me is that he got into trail running because of the injury stuff.
And he's not the only one. We've heard that story many times.
And the thing that I really am interested in is how he's been able to stay healthy since. So
on that note, some good advice to wrap up the conversation.
Yes. Yeah. So Andrea from Metcons and Miles, she is one of my connections. She's another blogger, has some great information on her website. One of the things that she tells people is that they need to add in trail miles slowly when transitioning to being a trail runner. Sometimes we're like, yeah, I ran 20 miles last weekend for my long run, so I can do 15 in the trails, they are a different animal. So transition
Sometimes literally.
slowly. Yeah, animals. Yeah, that is something that trail runners do talk quite a bit about, the animals on the trail. And she also mentions in some of her 100K training to practice running in the dark, which is not a consideration many of us make when we're thinking about racing, but you need to practice running in the dark and having all your equipment working correctly. And also just it's different, like your perception in the dark is different. So when you're on trails, you literally need to be able to like know what's coming and be more coordinated in the dark.
And if you're like one of the two of us sitting here and you already have some troubles with coordination on trails, and then you turn out the lights.
Yes.
Well.
Yes.
So
that's great advice. And then, sorry, I have one more, Zach.
The
other thing was doing more hiking. You might not be able to do as many miles. Running is what might be necessary if you're going to be doing a 100-mile race or 100K or however long your race is.
It's more like a trek. We shouldn't call these things races purely, because it's more like a trek.
It's a journey.
It's definitely
journey of a
a
lifetime.
process experience. Yeah, that's good advice. Definitely is. So we'll link to that. And in conclusion on the topic, to answer the question, so what are the benefits of running trails? Certainly, foremost, that new experience thing. You need something that's a change, or you want to take a different angle with running for a bit. Trail racing is a great way to do that, because it can be so interesting and so different, but at the same time, it's still within the sport. So you love the sport, but you want to try a new angle. I like that. Also, getting off the roads, even so just like in a temporary or once in a while kind of situation, getting off the roads for a bit can be good for your body. And so certainly it's, it's relieving the joints, which I said my knees, hurt after talking with Rob. It's really probably the alternative, though. Running on the roads is what's causing my knees problems.
Yes.
But so getting off the pavement can be a helpful thing. But then, as Andrea's advice mentioned, the nature of the muscles that you're using. So it's really not a bad idea to occasionally get on uneven, unstable surfaces, especially if you do it gradually.
And not too fast.
Not too fast. Don't do your speed workouts on the trails for the first time. Those kinds of things. And then certainly the idea of just simply there's a whole nother community of runners out there that you may not be intersecting with as much if you're not running trails. And so that new sect is a great way to engage with more runners.
Yeah. And also taking the pace down a notch. Being able to lose the watch, lose that feedback, and really listen to your body.
Because the watch isn't going to be accurate anyway.
Exactly. Your
so it's
GPS
not like you're
isn't
getting
going to
real
work, and it's
information.
going to be slower. So you have to just throw away any thoughts about pacing.
And we really appreciated Rob's comment about just getting out into the world, into nature, and experiencing the world geographically in a different way. When we run on the roads especially, we tend to stick to the areas that are defined by the roads. So we don't get to some of these areas that you can when you're doing the trail stuff. And there's incredible experiences out there. Also, be safe, because there's some unsafe experiences out there too.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining us. And we have another Ultra Runner for you next week with a different theme. So we're going to be talking about mental health and emotional health and what it has to do with running.
So be sure you head to AtoZrunning.com/contest to participate in the latest giveaway. And as always, more for you soon.